There are many types of power in the world today. The power to energize physical resources, technology, the power to control matter. But perhaps the greatest power is that which will unleash the goodness and greatness within every human soul. This is the power of truth. To experience that which is eternal is to experience the power of truth. It's like a switch inside the self, where I go from darkness to enlightenment, light. To experience my own eternal identity. I am a soul, a spiritual being, a traveler through time. To experience my inherent qualities by knowing I am eternally a child of God, having the same spiritual DNA. And to understand the cyclical nature of time. That the world will always return to a healed state. When I reflect on these eternal truths, filled with light, that power converts into purity, goodness. It's automatic and natural. The more I absorb truth, the more I radiate goodness. Goodness is the greatest power, which enables me to use all other powers in such a worthwhile way. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And today we are exploring part 2, The Truth Will Set You Free. So the last few thoughts that we had shared last week was about truth and self-respect, self-worth. And Sister Judy was sharing about how important it is to revise. You had called the aim and objective. What is the purpose of Raja Yoga? So that I'm very clear about what truth is, because we were sharing that there's such a journey about what truth means to others. It was really interesting. You were sharing about that, even though it is what is truth, it's about freeing myself from the bondage of illusion. So we just wanted to explore more about this aspect of truth and self-respect. This aspect, I know it's a sensitive topic, but this aspect about your truth and my truth, and in terms of the truth that will set you free, excuse me, in terms of Raja Yoga, what are your thoughts in terms of just trying to grasp what is my journey to figure out what is the real me in the midst of internal struggles, opinions, past experiences, maybe even things are happening, externally around me, to be very clear about why I'm doing what I'm doing to become free.
I guess some way what exactly we're trying to set free. So this idea that actually the self-respect is in some ways inside of an inner jail, and the bars of that jail are these illusions, these different beliefs and attachments, etc., that we're holding. So they are not going to want to cooperate. So I think first off, the person, each of us has to come to a point when we're very open to new ideas, open. We will say, I actually don't know, coming to if you will, a very humbled point. But even then, it's going to require incredible objectivity and detachment to be able to see clearly beyond these very deeply held beliefs that I feel are true, to see beyond these illusions that have been presenting themselves as truths. Truth is absolute. And so there really can't be this idea of my truth or your truth, just my opinions and your opinions, and getting to the point where actually no one knows what's going on. To kind of get, including the self. Because if we look honestly as we go through the day, we very often have this inner feeling, I am right. So or we can have the other side of the spectrum where we doubt ourselves and don't trust ourselves completely and feel we're always wrong. Neither of those are actually accurate. So there's if you will, a bit of surrender in becoming free. And I think that's what's fascinating, is to connect words like discipline, binding, and surrender to a process of freedom. Makes it quite unique. Most people think freedom has nothing to do with those terms, but renunciation is huge in becoming free.
Could you clarify more about what renunciation means, spiritually speaking, in Raja Yoga?
Basically, I am renouncing or letting go of that which has me in bondage, is causing me harm. So the problem is I'm very attached to those things. I've developed familiarity with them. In some ways, I feel I might even feel I'm getting attainment from them. So it's quite tricky, but they're causing damage. So one of the examples we sometimes use is addiction, to say substances that, I really feel I'm getting something from it, but in truth, it's actually damaging a lot. So I'm renouncing that which harms me.
I was thinking about this again, this aspect of self-worth, self-respect, and being able to see things around me in a truthful way. What does that mean, to be seeing things in a truthful way? Like, is it objective? Is it, again, this absolute truth, which what we are studying of Raja Yoga?
I had such an interesting encounter today. Had to get, as I'm sure many of you have, the annual eye checkup. And I have this very colorful eye doctor. And we always have very, very deep conversations. And so she's said this before. She says, every day I get to see people eye to eye. And she wasn't just talking about the physical eyes. Although I think her profession combined with her personal interest, which is very much to, almost spiritual, even as she looks into the physical eyes, I think she's seeing quite a bit about the soul. But, to be able to see, as she was speaking, I thought, wow, the capacity to see is so critical. Physically, it's critical, but it's so critical in terms of the journey of self-transformation. And actually, blindness is one of the things that puts us into bondage. So really having a clear eye on the self is such an art. It's such an art, and it's really a challenge. Sometimes we call it the intellect, for the intellect to be functioning well, to get it into a good functioning state. This is really what the role of being exposed to the truth is to get my eyesight back. But it's quite an art to develop objectivity and clarity about the self.
Can you share what that experience is like? Looking at oneself, maybe seeing things that need to improve, seeing mistakes from a place that's objective. Because for many, they feel, well, wouldn't I just feel bad about myself, or I'll just blame others then?
Yeah, actually, our concept of looking honestly at the self has become sometimes very combined with feeling bad. Look how honest I am. I'm able to admit to my mistakes and repent and all of these things, but feeling bad about the self, which is why, again, I need to be armed with the truth for this vision to work properly. And part of the idea of truth is it's going to give me a sense of self-respect or self-value that I can actually see far more clearly, not through eyes of guilt or shame or doubt, but through eyes of self-respect. They see very differently.
Now, we often share that in Raja Yoga, when it comes to soul consciousness, it's a whole world. And when there is that awareness of self, what is that like in terms of being able to see one's full story when there is self-respect?
The first thing that perhaps is quite lovely about self-respect is it liberates us from one of the greatest bondages we all seem to have, which is arrogance or ego. Ego so distorts. It's like being in a house of mirrors. It so distorts our vision. So that's once I'm sort of have that self-respect and free from that distorting that distorting aspect, then I'm able to see much more clearly, and I know that often when I look at the sharings from some of the original students, they really speak a lot about, I think the words they use perhaps don't quite capture the translations, but to be able to look and see what I need to change within the self is really all I need to be interested in is restoring the self to my original highest potential. That's all I should be interested in. So I need to have a very, very powerful, resilient stage to keep looking back at the self, because the pull is so great to look outside and say that's being truthful or honest. And it's not. It's to be able to look at the self, but not through the lens of feeling bad, but through that very powerful lens of self-respect. And being able to be free of that ego as we look.
It's often shared about Brahma Baba that when he first awakened and he had a vision that he is Narayan, that something clicked inside about who he really is while he was studying. But I was thinking about that while you were sharing that just even in day-to-day life, it seems like we oftentimes can disconnect what we're doing from what we're aiming for. Even just like, I don't know, just someone trying to get into, I don't know, law school. It seems to often be a disconnect. Why do you think that is the case? When you had talked about aim and objective last week, you had emphasized how important it is to make it so clear. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Connecting truth to what this is all about. And I know we were sharing last week that even just the word truth, there's a whole entire experience around that. And it's so easy to lose the point when the whole point is, can I see myself clearly to honor the real me?
Part of the problem might be that we really need to commit or choose. So there's the image, and then there's the real me. So spirituality is about dedicating myself to cultivating the real me. But we've been in this bondage to an illusion, this image, for so long. So we actually think we have to keep them both up, keep them both going. And people get confused, and what should I do? And, I've got to fulfill these responsibilities. So we're kind of trying to straddle two words rather than, the term we often use is, now everything in your life is serving this self-transformation. It really isn't that complicated, but it does require that I make a choice inside rather than trying to keep my foot in two different boats. I can still work at a job and do all sorts of things, but internally I'm now using everything to deepen my understanding of myself, move through self-transformation. So in other words, my outcomes or my objective is a little bit different. So when I go into work in the morning, my objective is no longer to make money or, to impress this or that or the other person. My objective is to continually cultivate that true nature in everything I'm doing. So it's very simple, actually. I just need to commit to a single objective rather than trying to keep the illusion and the truth going at the same time. It's like being someone who gets day trips out of jail. If it goes back at night. Here at night, we might have a nice evening meditation, but during the day, we're back in jail. So.
Yeah, I was thinking about the lens of unworthiness and how we can distort seeing things. It was a few years ago, I had such a meaningful realization that self-respect is when your vision of yourself doesn't shake no matter what's happening. And I remember hearing about one of the seniors in this study, and I know you've heard of this, Sister Mohini had shared that, there were times when someone would accuse her of something or blame something about her, super upset in front of, many others. And she would not be affected by that. And even her vision of others would not be affected. Like, that sounds like such a liberating place to be in. And at the same time, I don't know if many can even grasp that that's even possible.
This idea of keeping the heart clean. If I keep the heart clean, then it's entirely possible. But when the conscience is biting a little bit, when I haven't been completely clean, that is honoring self-respect and respect for others. If I haven't kept things clean, then yes, I can be easily affected and confused when others might say something. But if I've been keeping things clean, then there's nothing to worry about.
So the confusion is it's not even clear within myself. Because we were talking about last week when I had asked you the question, you were saying, well, we were never really in the shoes of one of the other seniors to know what they were experiencing. And I was saying, but you know what you were experiencing. And I was referring to something you had mentioned, that when you first came into the study and you learned about that you are a soul, that there was a deep recognition, connection with self-respect. But I had asked at that time in terms of not being very clear about one's, who one is, but there is a pull. Something is really pulling you as you go along. Can you recall what that experience is like in terms of, trying to discover and realize the real you, but then when the ego acts up to try to dishonor, your true standards, like, is there, because I think about Brahma Baba, his character was just amazing at the get-go, even before he came in the study, but to be able to hold that truth of who I really am in the midst of, when reactivity can come up. Not sure if you can recall or what you felt your journey continues to unfold regarding this.
I can only say that the desire to be free is very strong in the soul, to continue through what seems like, not a lot happening, especially in the beginning. It might feel, if we're honest with ourselves, it might feel like we're kind of wading through the mud. But the desire to be free is a very strong pull in the soul when things have awakened. So we just keep going. We have complete, I think, that faith in the power of truth and the practice of truth to set the self free. It's the only thing that makes sense, actually. Really pulls us, that faith in the truth really keeps pulling us along. But yeah, I definitely can say that in the beginning it was, I think what actually happens is that we didn't realize we were imprisoned until we were exposed to the truth. So then there was no battle inside. But the moment that we realize that we are imprisoned, that's when things get very interesting. And we often hear souls say, oh, my life was fine until I started studying Raj Yoga. And the truth is it wasn't fine, but there was just no contrast. We were just unhappy without knowing it. We're imprisoned without knowing it. So that's really, to be expected, that the moment that we challenge the imprisonment, it's going to resist back, and it really gets very creative in its resistance. But the destiny of a soul to become true is very strong.
Now, we often share in this study, and the seniors have shared a lot about this, but because souls have asked, even the call of the time, that who was teaching in the study, and your recognition of soul consciousness was so profound from what you had shared. Do you recall if you also, it's like, no, this is clear, this is the truth? Were you clear as well, or that was a journey of recognizing who was teaching?
I think more than anything else, the feeling I had inside was, this is the only thing that makes sense. That was really the strong feeling inside. This could work. This is the only thing that makes sense. Did I think it was God or that it was truth? I don't know if it actually was in my mind that way, but it definitely was. This is the one and only thing that makes sense. That was very strong and continues to be strong.
The reason why I was thinking about that, because actually was you had shared a little bit about this morning, but you were talking about there are these beautiful murals that are created in Calgary. If you have a chance to take a look at them, and you need to remind me what BUMP stands for.
It's Beltline Urban Mural Project.
Say that really fast. Just joking. When you had shared that this last one that you saw, this crane was, just priming the wall just to make it blank, and that you had shared that beginning for the originals, the first students, that there was just so much love. Do you feel that every student in the study has some sort of experience of that priming happening?
When we look at the first students who continued to the end, we see that there's the same formula. This is why they were successful and had good foundation. They always, there was a specific thing that happened at the beginning, which was awakening of recognition was huge. This sort of creating a lot of purity in their life at the beginning, creating that so they had a very strong foundation. That's the ideal way for things to roll out, for it to be successful and farsighted. It doesn't necessarily roll out that way for everyone, and then it becomes very bumpy and they have to backtrack and all sorts of things. But the point was that in other endeavors, that's the way it rolls out. So ideally, before I cook a meal, I create a clean space to cook in. It's going to work out the best that way. Before I paint a painting, I have a blank canvas, not a dirty one. It's just going to work out better that way. So in every endeavor, that creates the best results. So, but that requires a certain sensitivity or interest. And I'm going to not feel it's a waste of time to develop that foundation because it's going to be underground. It was very interesting when they were whitewashing the brick wall, and I found that the most exciting part of the mural. And others were like, what are they doing? This is horror, this is so, it's just I thought, like, can you not see what they're doing? Can you not see the brilliance of what they're doing? That was so wise to create that foundation. That's what they always do. And then they'll have more success as they apply their vision to that foundation.
Yeah, when you shared that, you spent a lot of time in the beginning just reading. There was very few books on Raja Yoga, but a handful of books. Not like there was no lectures, there was no YouTube. Certainly none of the things, but whatever back in there were light ages, but whatever books there were in terms of references to the core of the study of Raja Yoga, you would read them, you would revise, you would write. But I felt like as if there was that priming that was happening inside for you. And that's why I was thinking, like you were saying, that same formula for each of us. Perhaps maybe that was, for each of us, an experience and exposure to something that was very purifying. Because I remember even hearing of a sister who had come to the center, and I don't know how much she actually took of the course, but she came every single Wednesday to the evening meditation that was at Kensington for long periods of time. And she had shared that, her sensitivity in terms of making choices had transformed. I find that, of course, during meditations, guiding souls to experience being a soul, but I'm sure that even the vibrations in the atmosphere would have had some sort of impact as well.
I think definitely we saw that for the early students, that they again went about this very truthfully. usually with a study, and we call this a study, usually with a study, we sort of race through to so-called advance, to accumulate more information, which we feel is advancing or progressing. Whereas I think we start with the original jewels, there was no sense of trying to, intellectually advance, but rather than going far, they want to go deep. And to go deep means I take the time and check, am I honestly experiencing this? So even lesson 1, I'm a soul. Am I honestly, I don't pass go until I honestly experience this. And the reason is that everything's built on that foundation. So my relationship with Supreme Soul, my relationship with virtues, my approach to service, my understanding of karma, it's all going to depend on that first piece. So I have to very honestly check before I start to race ahead thinking I'm progressing. Check, have I really experienced this? And constantly going back and checking. I will get feedback from my own reactions or responses, but have I really experienced? The relationship with God is so dependent on moving into a spiritual state. So really having to check honestly. Again, image has us in bondage, so it doesn't want us to experience anything deeply. It will allow us to think we're doing something, and it will allow us to feel good about ourselves for the wrong reasons, even in a spiritual study. So I have to really check that I'm not still imprisoned by image, but I'm now honestly checking myself about the depth of my experience.
Well, thank you, Judy. And those online, we've gone so deep, I didn't even look at the time. So we are far beyond. But we did start late because we seem to always have some IT issues. So we will have a little reflection.
In order to experience the truth, I need to be truthful, very aware and clear with myself about what's happening inside. Truth is not just connected to purity, it's connected to love. And to have that much love for the self, to want to benefit, nurture, heal, restore the self, this will help me be truthful. Am I giving myself that time to go deeply into an experience? Am I clear about progress and success? Or am I still using old metrics? Even as I sit here now, not worried about what anyone else thinks or how I appear, just focusing inwards on the self. Am I having a truthful experience of who and what I am? That I am a spiritual being, that I'm separate from this body. My true nature is very pure, lots of self-respect, such that I don't attach to or need to take value from anyone or anything. I become very quiet inside. All that grasping, controlling, seeking, it just fades away. I become a content, still point of being. looking truthfully. Do I take the time to hold an experience of the truth? Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining with us this evening. We have the next Raja Yoga course in English happening on the Wednesdays, 6:30 to 8 o'clock on the Wednesdays of September. That will be offered on site as well as online. I believe there's also Raja Yoga Raja Yoga full course in Hindi over 2 weekends as well in September. We have a workshop, I believe, on the last Sunday of the month. I believe that's on site. So you'll find all of that on the center's website, calgary.brahmakumaris.ca. There's also all of that is souls can register for on the Eventbrite. Just search for BK Calgary. So thank you for joining. Thank you for those online on Instagram and YouTube. Let us know if you have topics you'd like to explore. You're welcome to email the center. Thank you. Om Shanti.